Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, which are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And today's week is week 28, self-reliance versus self-reliance. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered the need for attunement with God, with the gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong and in fact valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet." Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine. For this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramahansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning again. My name is Dharmaraj, and my wife Dharmini normally joins me here. She was very sorry to miss you all this morning. We had a dear friend from India who needed a ride to the airport, and as she had given us many rides to the airport in India, we felt we owed her one in Los Angeles. But she'll be back next week. This topic of self-reliance with a little s, the little self, versus self-reliance with the big S, brings up all kinds of questions. Right out of the reading, Swami Kriyananda asks, what about self-reliance, standing on one's own 2 feet? Is that not a valid belief? And there's something especially, at least in my experience, inherently American about saying self-reliant, the Puritan principle of self-reliance. I think it's even stated as self-reliance. And we know what it feels like to be self-reliant, to be able to take care of your needs, to be able to accomplish things. And we know what it feels like to be self-unreliant. Like, I'm really hungry, and mom and dad aren't around, and all there is cereal. Again. Like, maybe I should learn to cook. At least these are thoughts that go through my head or went through my head at a certain point in life. And it is a valid belief. It is a truth that we need to stand on our own 2 feet in any case, and also to make progress on the spiritual path. It doesn't come, I say this because the challenge to being self-reliant on ourselves is I am so self-reliant that I don't need a spiritual teacher. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I will discover all the laws of the Spirit myself. This was again an attitude that I myself had. And I realized when I read Autobiography of a Yogi that so much of what I had already kind of figured out on my own at the age of 20 was in that book. And that was about 10% of the book. And then there was 90% more that were all these things that I never would have figured out. I mean, if you're familiar with the meditation techniques, and in Kriya Yoga in particular, how would any of us have invented Kriya Yoga? No way. And so I realized, because I was raised in scientific background, and you do experiments, and you learn from experience, and that's how you know what is true. I know because I did it and it worked. I didn't need anyone to tell me. Yeah, okay, but then that's like being a scientist and in the spiritual world, but never reading a single science textbook. I don't believe in gravity until I've experienced it myself. I don't believe in, the hardness of materials until I experience it myself. Okay, I discovered it, and that's what it is in the spiritual world. Why walk into walls constantly finding them all the time? Because you just get bruised. Why not say, is there a path through this maze? And then once we get out, then we can talk about, well, maybe it would have been better if I'd figured it out myself, but I'm out. And that's the point, to be out, to get out of this labyrinth. And so, even still, though, so in a way we have to offer our ego and my will at the feet of God's will. And that represents a humbling, even an attitude of service. What can I do for you? How can I put my will in tune with thy will? When Yogananda met Sri Yukteswar, his guru, Sri Yukteswar said to him, when I myself met my own guru, he said, allow me to discipline you. And Sri Yukteswar said that I found by attuning my will to Lahiri Mahashai's wisdom-guided will, my own efforts met with success. And that's the key, the wisdom-guided will, as we did in the affirmation, that my mind be open to the wisdom guidance of my soul. We all know that we have a little voice inside that whispers and guides us. We have another voice, too, that also tries to guide us. But still, that when we realize there is a such thing as truth, at least this was something that I always cared about. In science, there was a concept of, well, something was true. And if it were true, it didn't matter my opinion about it. It didn't matter whether it was a convenient truth. But if it was true, it was something I had to relate to. And as soon as we get there, which I'm sure we all are there, even long ago, then the whole attitude of my will versus thy will takes on a whole different color, because I want to be open to what is true. And if I'm wrong, I want to know that so I can start moving in the right direction. Now, I know this is all well and good. And so I was thinking about this as, okay, well, why is it difficult? I mean, after all, if I'm supposed to be less self-reliant, relying on my own thoughts and opinions merely, and trying to be open to wisdom and guidance and asking God, what's your will? Well, how do we do that? And in what ways do we do that? It's one thing to say, God, I don't want to assert my ego, so on my salad, should I have avocado or not? You decide. Yes, avocado. I feel that. Good choice, Lord. Okay, well, it's a good step. Better than not asking about the avocado, but, there's not a lot on the line there. I remember once I was, this was before I was at Ananda. I was a graduate student at MIT in computer science department, having a hard time. I liked what I was doing, but inside my soul was drying up. And everything was fun, but it wasn't enough. And so I decided I'm just going to graduate. I'm just going to finish my master's degree. I was in a PhD program, so I was going to drop out, which we say is getting a master's degree. That's the polite way of saying dropping out. So I was going to drop out, get this degree, and be done. And I was going to do it in just a year and a half instead of the normal 2 years. So I was in the last 6 months of my proposed year and a half, and I was going to get this thing done. And the whole time I was doing it, it was really hard. There was so much to do to finish this master's thesis. I had to write this 85-page thing full of math and graphs and things like that, and it was going very slowly. And also, my family was really angry, and you can't leave and all this stuff, and it just felt like I was tearing out of the situation. So although I said, no, this is what I want, and I want it for God, so it's like, it has to be His will too, right? I still felt in my heart something is off. And a friend of mine wrote me a letter and said, and he was from Ananda, and he said, well, when I'm blocked in a situation, I ask, is there any opportunity that I'm overlooking? And so I ask you, is there any opportunity you're overlooking? And I said, of course not. I am very observant and always know about all the opportunities that there are, and so that's not the problem. Except there was that one teaching offer that I kept ignoring. What happened was I was on a scholarship, so I didn't have to teach as a teaching assistant to the professors. And so when they said we need teaching assistants, I thought, well, I'm going to just focus on my research. But then I realized, after reading my friend's letter, maybe teaching would do it for me. Which means, leading one little thing, or two little things a week. It wasn't like big, but still. Maybe interacting with students, maybe, imparting the blissful teachings of mathematics would really, re-inspire me. So let me try. And it was an opportunity that had been repeatedly coming, and I had ignored it. And this is a little bit of what Divine Mother does. She says, I'd like you to go this way. And we say, yeah, that's fine. This is the way I'm going. And then she says, okay, I'm going to lock every door in the room except that door. And so then we go, and finally, and it's always the last door, not just because it's the last door we tried and opened, it's because it's the last door we wanted. And so, oh, look, let's go this way now. And that's how she works with us, or at least that's been my experience. And so the teaching job had something. And so I spent another semester there teaching and finding out that it still didn't satisfy me. It was nice to interact with the students, and it was fun, but there was so little I could talk to them. And one person said, I got a B+, and so I'm going to drop out of school. And I said, any other options besides that? I'm a failure because I got a B+. And I tried to, if you think about it, you have worth as an individual. Just stick to the math, man. That was all we were allowed to talk about was math. And so it's like, there's a few other things we could try to help kind of iron out or not, unknot. But there was no receptivity. This kid's like, look, I'm 18. I know what I'm doing. Okay. I was there. And so teaching didn't do it, and at the same time, I said, okay, now I'm going to finish. I was there another 6 months, so it was a total of 2 years. I said, now I'm going to, friends from Ananda Village were going to come across the country to start Ananda in Rhode Island. And I had known them, and they said, well, can you please help us when we arrive? And I said, sure. I was in Massachusetts. It wasn't like super close, but it wasn't that far. So I said, okay, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay and help my friends in Rhode Island, help them land. They're not from the East Coast. I can, do things for them. I still have to finish my thesis, and I need some kind of a job. So I thought, well, I'll just get a summer job at AT&T where I've worked the past, 4 summers or whatever it was. It was like just going home for Christmas. It was such a guaranteed thing. And my friends at AT&T said, there's no job. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we have a different policy and process now, and you didn't apply early enough, so there's no job. So I thought, well, this is strange. I'm being booted out of my own place. And then my PhD advisor said, don't stay here. He said, I'm not even going to be here the whole summer. So there's nothing, I can't help you, so you can't stay here either. So I thought, I can't stay and I can't go to the usual place. Again, every door is locked. And I reread my friend's email. And it had said, are there any opportunities you're overlooking? And I said again, no, of course not, because I always am observant of my opportunities, as long as they're opportunities I want or am interested in. And there was an opportunity that had come that I didn't want and wasn't interested in. And it was a job offer from Xerox and a place called Xerox PARC, P-A-R-C, which becomes relevant later. And they wanted somebody who was studying artificial intelligence and internet searches. And I was the only person in the department who happened to have done work in artificial intelligence and internet searches. And I saw that in the advertisement and just went, yeah, ugh, because I didn't like artificial intelligence and internet searches. And I didn't want to be associated with those, so I just, yeah, it's for someone else. And that job offer kept getting circulated around, and did anybody see this? And nobody's replied yet, and I just kept saying, yeah, not for me. And so when I was faced with every door locked again, I thought, well, there was that opportunity that I've been ignoring. I don't want this job. And then I thought it through. Xerox PARC, P-A-R-C, stands for Palo Alto Research Center. Xerox was in Palo Alto. Ananda was in Palo Alto. And suddenly I realized, hey, if I got this job, I could move from Massachusetts to Palo Alto, and I could live in the Palo Alto Ananda community. And I'd never lived in a community before. And I thought, okay. So I sent my resume off to these people. I filled out the thing. They called me in a half hour and said, hi, are you the one we need? You know, and so I still was a little guarded because it's artificial intelligence and internet searches, but oh well, it's also God. And so he asked me the simplest questions in this interview. Something like, if I were to say to you, I got a new car, you might say, what? What's maybe a question you might ask? How could you afford it? Yeah, no, I'm kidding. What's a question you might ask? What kind of car is it? And it was the mathematical equivalent of what kind of car. Wow, good question. My God, yeah. Well, we were thinking this, but then we also, I think you would be great for this project. It's like, what? And I'm not, being self-effacing or humble. I'm serious. It was, what kind of car did you get, kind of a question. And so I realized that this was Divine Mother not only leaving the one door unlocked, but then yanking me through it as soon as I opened it, because she had a different thing in mind for me. And so I moved to Palo Alto in California, and like perhaps many of us, once in California, there was no way I was leaving, because it was just too wonderful. And it started this whole other chapter of my life that was much bigger than the small little thing that I had figured out for myself. And so I just love that image also when something comes that really just stinks, that's just not fair and that's unkind, and then we try to solve it. Like, suppose I recently had a friend kind of turn on me, and I thought, and I had to kind of go through that whole process. And I also, I had to kind of think my way through it, because I've read the books, I've meditated, I've studied the teachings, and I feel really mad and hurt. So I thought, well, the first reason I feel hurt is because I'm taking it personally, that this person turned on me, and I thought we were friends, and a real friend wouldn't do this. And Swami Kriyananda has repeatedly said, especially through all the betrayals he's experienced in his life of other people, that we have to not take these things personally. How people treat us is their business, not ours. And I thought, well, it feels like my business, like bad business. And so I thought, well, how can I impersonalize this? Another thing he said is, I never really feel that someone is mad at me. I feel that they're mad at the situation. And I thought, well, that's something I can start with. It's true. The person in this case was mad at the situation and a situation. It was actually a situation I wasn't directly responsible for, but somehow I was the target of. And I could at least take one step back and say, okay, this person isn't mad at me. They're mad at the situation. And then after going that step, it was enough. It was kind of like putting a nice big, plastic Band-Aid over my heart that like, okay, now I've stopped the blood flow, but I still can't feel anything. But at least this person is over here being mad at the situation, not at me. And then I thought, well, this still doesn't feel very good. How can I take this deeper? And I realized, well, why is the person mad at the situation? Well, the person is mad at the situation because they too are hurt. And suddenly my heart opened. I don't want my friend to be hurt. I feel really sorry that my friend is hurt. And again, the thing that my friend was hurt about, it really wasn't anything through my responsibility, but I felt a responsibility suddenly to my friend. How can I help the person? So then my heart was more open, and then I thought, why couldn't I have just done this in the first place? Why couldn't I have just leapt to this point? And we do get lots of practice, like hundreds of beatings, until we kind of, okay, I remember we do survive each one, and so we'll probably survive this one too. But I realized that maybe it comes from past lives. I mean, why when somebody does the smallest unkind thing, like, nice shoes, do we like go, oh, God? I mean, so what? Like, high school is way over. But still, it can be, one little thing. And I think part of it, at least, this is what I like to imagine, if there isn't truth to it, is that maybe it brings up betrayals from the past. And how many times our hearts have been through a betrayal. Sometimes even in this life, there's been quite a few in the beginning. And so just a touch, as Yogananda said, of suffering is enough to reawaken all of that pain, but also then that pain blossoms into resolution. The only person who will not hurt me is God. As in the song that we sang, when my best friends misunderstand, what comes before that? Something comes before that. And then it's when my best friends, yes, when I laugh, oh, when I cry with pain, when my best friends misunderstand. I mean, of all the things we could cry with pain for that he could have written into that song, when I stub my toe, or when I bang my thumb. No, when my best friends misunderstand. And that can be a real hard one. And so, but what do we say then? When my best friends misunderstand, I give up and cry and hide under the pillow. That isn't how it goes, right? No. Okay, sorry. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. And let that be our mantra.